In February 2009, Governor Jim Doyle introduced a budget proposal that would impose a petroleum franchise gas tax. If enacted, this tax would have far-reaching and negative unintended consequences for Wisconsin petroleum marketers, consumers, and government leaders. Before we address the specifics of this proposal, let's review the petroleum industry as it exists in Wisconsin today. First, motor fuel is supplied by petroleum refiners through pipelines to 9 petroleum terminals in Wisconsin. Over 70% of the 3 billion-plus gallons of fuel sold in our state originates at 3 refineries in Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota. The Murphy Refinery in Superior is the only facility based in Wisconsin. Second, contrary to popular belief, not a single convenience store or service station is owned or operated by the largest major oil companies. Instead, these facilities are owned and operated by hundreds of small, medium, and large independent marketers. Third, it is conservatively estimated that in 2030, 60% of the motor fuel used in Wisconsin will come from petroleum. Now let's follow a barrel of oil from Alberta, Canada to a gasoline pump in Waunakee, Wisconsin. Canada is America's largest supplier of imported oil. This barrel of oil is being shipped from Canada to the BP refinery in Whiting, Indiana. By the way, only about 2/3 of a 42-gallon barrel of oil become motor fuel. The remaining third is refined into products like jet fuel and feedstock for plastics, paint, ag chemicals, and many others. After pipeline transportation costs and refining, the wholesale or rack price of a gallon of gasoline purchased for sale to Mefferts BP in Waunakee is $1.50. Mefferts takes delivery at a petroleum terminal in McFarland. Mefferts then takes the rack price, adds 51.3 cents of state and federal taxes, trucking costs, factors in competition across the street, and adds a margin, bringing the pump price to $2.11 on this given day. Competition is fierce.
I can tell you that if our competition is a penny lower than us, we're going to have loyal customers across the street. Well, people think that we're making a lot of money on our gasoline, but it's actually pennies a gallon. Typically, we'll work off of anywhere close to a dime total margin profit per gallon. And depending on what's happening, the volatility of the market, it may be less. Some days it may be a little bit more.
Now let's turn our attention to the petroleum franchise gas tax. This proposal would impose up to a 3% tax on petroleum refiners and marketers on the first sale of motor fuel in Wisconsin. Petroleum refiners and marketers would be prohibited by law from passing on the cost of this tax. Furthermore, the tax would be graduated with the first $15 million of sales exempted. The remaining sales would be taxed at increasing rates, with refiners and marketers paying 3% on fuel sales that exceed $120 million. This petroleum franchise gas tax would have additional dramatic and negative impacts on petroleum refiners, suppliers, marketers, and consumers. Here's how. While approximately 2/3 of the fuel sold in Wisconsin must be delivered under existing contracts, up to 1 billion gallons are sold in the open market.
Well, the discretionary gallons, that's the biggest thing, is the discretionary gallons won't come to Wisconsin.
Most of these discretionary gallons are purchased for sale in rural areas.
It probably won't hurt so much the motors because of the branded contracts that are in place. I think the segments that will really be affected would be the agricultural and the commercial markets, because those are discretionary gallons. There's not a lot of contracted gallons, and those are the gallons that go into different states. They won't find their way into Wisconsin.
Also, keep in mind that each 1% reduction in gasoline supply represents the equivalent of approximately 600 million vehicle miles driven by the general public if the fleet average is 20 miles per gallon. At a time when Wisconsin should be promoting increased energy supply and access, this petroleum franchise gas tax would do just the opposite. This tax will put motor fuel marketing in Wisconsin on its ear. And petroleum marketers that sell motor fuel on street corners throughout the Badger State will be adversely affected in the following ways. First, refiners are partners with these small businesses. Marketers stand to lose valuable sales and branding support from these refiners.
There's advertising, there's different types of loyalty programs, there's investment into technology that helps us meet the specifications of a lot of credit card companies. Those programs will all dry up and go away.
Second, after the mergers of the 1990s, petroleum marketers have fewer options should their refiners seek other markets.
Because of what's happened over the last 10 years with the mergers and acquisitions, there's very few suppliers left, not a lot of choices out there. And if this law comes into effect, there'll be fewer choices.
Finally, the graduated nature of the tax will make the state the judge of who wins and loses in the marketplace.
That creates winners and losers right off the bat. What we see is you'll have a marketer that has to pay the tax across the street from someone that doesn't, and that's an unfair disadvantage right away. The state has chosen to make someone a winner and someone a loser.
There are other unintended consequences that would result from this ill-advised proposal, not the least of which is its legality. In 2007, notable legal experts reviewed this proposal and concluded that it would violate the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. And make no mistake, this proposal, as written, has not been enacted in any other state in the Union. Randy Meffert and Meffert Oil Company are like hundreds of small to medium-sized petroleum marketers across Wisconsin. They are hard-working to a fault. Folks like Randy Meffert care about providing quality fuel at fair prices. Here's his take on the petroleum franchise gas tax.
We supply into a lot of rural areas, and my fear is that supply would be so hard to find, and then when you did find product, it would be very expensive compared to neighboring states. I think this law is just going to hurt consumers. It's going to hurt commercial contractors, farm, home heating. It's going to hit every segment.
And one final word for the governor.
Governor, this is bad legislation. This is ultimately going to hurt Wisconsin consumers and businesses.